Our story begins with God testing Abraham with an unimaginable command. Picture this: a man of faith, Abraham, is suddenly given a divine directive that seems inconceivable. The voice of God resonates, instructing him, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." This is no ordinary request. It's a command that carries with it profound implications, a test of faith that shakes the very foundation of human understanding. Can you imagine the weight of this command? The son, Isaac, whom Abraham cherishes, is now to be offered as a sacrifice to the very God who had promised that through Isaac Abraham's descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky. This story, laden with spiritual significance, introduces us to three key characters. First, there's Abraham, a model of faith, who had left his homeland at God's command and had waited decades for the birth of Isaac. Then there's Isaac, the cherished son, the child of promise. And finally there's God, the tester, the one who initiates this unsettling narrative. Each character plays a crucial role in this divine drama. Abraham, the obedient servant willing to surrender what he holds most dear. Isaac, the innocent son, unknowingly walking towards the altar. And God, the orchestrator of this profound test, observing Abraham's reaction to the command. This scenario is indeed a test of faith, obedience, and surrender. It's about trusting in God's plan, even when it seems unfathomable. It's a test that transcends human understanding, pushing the boundaries of faith into the realm of the divine. Abraham, faced with this daunting task, makes his choice. His decision sets the stage for one of the most compelling narratives in biblical literature. It's a story that continues to resonate, challenging our understanding of faith, obedience, and divine providence. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into this narrative and uncover the layers of Abraham's ultimate test of faith. Early the next morning, Abraham sets out on a journey that will test his faith to its core. With his son Isaac and two of his servants in tow, they embark on the journey towards the region of Moriah. Despite the heavy burden of the task at hand, Abraham shows no sign of hesitation. His obedience to God's command is unwavering, his faith steadfast. As they traverse the rugged terrain, the silence is broken by Isaac, his son, his beloved. Isaac, unaware of the divine command his father has been given, innocently asks about the lamb for the burnt offering. It's a question that could shake any father to his core. Yet Abraham's response, calm and composed, reflects his unyielding faith. He says, "God himself will provide the lamb." In this moment we see the depth of Abraham's trust in God's providence. It's not a blind obedience, but a faith born out of a deep-rooted relationship with God. Abraham's faith is not passive, it's active, dynamic, and responsive. His words to Isaac are not just a comforting response to his son's curiosity, but also a declaration of his faith in God's promise. This is the faith that defines Abraham, a faith that doesn't waver in the face of the impossible, a faith that chooses to trust in God's provision, even when the path ahead seems uncertain. As they continue their journey, the weight of the upcoming sacrifice hangs in the air. Yet, Abraham presses on, his faith unwavering. His obedience to God's command is complete, not partial. He's ready to do what's asked of him, no matter how daunting it may seem. His faith isn't built on conditions or conveniences, but on an unshakable trust in God's promise. As they reach their destination, the true test of faith begins. It's here that Abraham's obedience will be put to the ultimate test. Will he falter, or will he stand firm in his faith? The stage is set, the characters are in place, and the narrative of one of the most powerful stories of faith and obedience unfolds. This journey, this test, is not just about Abraham's obedience, but it's also about his faith in God's provision. It's a faith that believes in God's promise, even when the circumstances seem impossible. It's a faith that chooses to trust God's word over human understanding. As we journey through this story, we're challenged to reflect on our own faith. Would we, like Abraham, trust in God's provision even when it doesn't make sense? Would we obey without hesitation, even when the command challenges our human understanding? In the face of the ultimate test, Abraham's faith stands firm. His obedience to God's command is unwavering. And as he prepares to make the ultimate sacrifice, we're reminded of the power of an obedient faith that trusts in God's provision, no matter what. Standing on the mountaintop, Abraham prepares to make the ultimate sacrifice. This statement takes us to the very heart of the narrative. We find Abraham on a mountain in Moriah, a place of significant spiritual resonance, poised to make an unimaginable sacrifice. Abraham, a man of unwavering faith, is faced with the task of preparing an altar. The weight of this moment is profound. He arranges the wood, each piece placed with a heavy heart, but steady hands. Every step Abraham takes, every stone he places echoes with devotion. His obedience, even in the face of such a heart-wrenching command, is a testament to his unwavering faith. With the altar prepared, Abraham faces the most challenging aspect of this divine test. He binds his beloved son Isaac and lays him on the altar. This is the moment of truth. The air grows still. Abraham's heart pounds like a drum echoing through the silence. His love for Isaac is deep and boundless, yet his faith in God is even more profound. Yet as Abraham raises his hand, the knife glinting in the sunlight, the unimaginable is halted. The angel of the Lord calls out, "Do not lay a hand on the boy." The tension shatters. The command is clear, and Abraham, ever obedient, lowers his hand. The test is over. In the thicket nearby, a ram is caught by its horns. Abraham, with a heart flooded with relief, takes the ram and offers it as a burnt offering instead of his son. The ram, provided by God himself, is a substitute for Isaac, a symbol of divine provision. This divine intervention is a pivotal moment in the narrative. The angel of the Lord, acting as God's messenger, intervenes, sparing Isaac and providing a substitute. God's provision is not only timely but also reveals his mercy and compassion. It's an overwhelming moment filled with profound relief and profound revelation. Abraham's faith, his willingness to obey God's command without question, is affirmed. His faith was not in vain. His trust in God's providence was not misplaced. In this moment, Abraham experienced firsthand the truth he had spoken to Isaac earlier: God himself will provide the lamb. These were not just words of comfort for his son, but a declaration of unwavering faith in God's provision. And here on the mountaintop, God did provide. At the very brink of sacrifice, God intervenes, affirming Abraham's unwavering faith. This scene, this divine test, is a powerful illustration of unwavering faith and divine provision. It's a story that echoes through the ages, reminding us of the depth of Abraham's faith and the extent of God's mercy. In the wake of divine intervention, Abraham names the place "the Lord will provide." These are not just words spoken in the heat of the moment. They are a declaration of trust and a testament to the faith of a man who was willing to give up his most treasured possession because he believed in God's promise. Abraham's action carries with it a profound spiritual symbolism. It is not just about the physical act of naming a place. It is about acknowledging God as the ultimate provider, the source of all that we have and all that we are. In his obedience, Abraham recognized that everything he possessed, including his beloved son, was a gift from God. And that same God who had given could also provide a way out when all seemed lost. But there's more to this moment than meets the eye. The story of Abraham's sacrifice is more than just a tale of faith and obedience. It foreshadows another, even greater act of sacrifice that would come thousands of years later. Just as Abraham was willing to sacrifice his son, God was willing to sacrifice his only son, Jesus Christ. And just as a ram was provided in the place of Isaac, Jesus was provided as a sacrifice for all of humanity. This act of divine love is the ultimate expression of God's provision, a gift of grace that goes beyond anything we could ever deserve or earn. Abraham's trust and obedience are central to this narrative. He didn't question God's command, he didn't try to negotiate or find a way out, he simply obeyed, trusting that God would provide. This act of faith wasn't easy. It was likely the hardest thing Abraham ever had to do. But his obedience revealed a heart that was fully surrendered to God, a heart that trusted in God's promise even when the circumstances seemed impossible. In the end, Abraham's faith was affirmed. The Lord did provide. And in that moment, Abraham was reminded of God's promise to him. A promise of descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the grains of sand on the seashore. A promise of a nation, of a people chosen by God. A promise that was confirmed not by Abraham's works but by his faith. Abraham's faith is affirmed and he is reminded of God's promise. This is more than a story about a man and his son. It's a story about faith, obedience, and divine provision. It's a story that reminds us of God's faithfulness, his love, and his promise to provide for his people. And it's a story that challenges us to trust in God's provision, just as Abraham did, even when we can't see the way forward. Having passed the test, Abraham is blessed by God. The divine narrative unfolds, revealing the magnitude of God's promise to Abraham. This isn't a small, trivial promise. No, this is a commitment of cosmic proportions, a pledge that will shape the course of human history. In the aftermath of the test, a voice from heaven speaks, reaffirming God's promises to Abraham. Imagine that moment. the voice of God echoing from the heavens, declaring, "I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore." God's promise is not just about quantity, but also about influence. The voice adds, "Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies." This is an assurance of victory, a guarantee that Abraham's lineage will not just survive, but thrive, exerting influence over nations. God's blessing is not an arbitrary reward for Abraham's obedience. It's a divine affirmation of a covenant, a sacred bond between God and his chosen servant. This covenant is not just about Abraham, it's about us. It's about every generation that follows. It's about the lineage of faith that traces back to this pivotal moment on the mountaintop. This blessing is also a testament to God's character. He is a God of his word. When he makes a promise, he keeps it. His faithfulness is as steadfast as the stars that dot the night sky, as countless as the grains of sand on the seashore. In the grand tapestry of human history, Abraham's story stands out as a beacon of faith. His obedience under extreme testing, his unwavering trust in God's provision, and his humble acceptance of God's blessings, all paint a picture of a man who truly walked with God. And so, we see the ripple effects of Abraham's faithfulness. His obedience reverberates through time, echoed in the stories of his descendants in the lineage of faith that stretches across centuries. Abraham's faithfulness has been rewarded, echoing through generations. As we conclude the story, we see Abraham returning to his servants. This narrative, as daunting and intense as it may be, is an enduring testament to Abraham's unwavering faith in God's plan. Upon this reflection, we can draw a plethora of insights. In the face of an impossibly painful command, Abraham shows us the essence of true faith. His obedience, even when asked to sacrifice his beloved son Isaac, is a testament to his profound trust in God. His faith was not blind, but rooted in the belief that God, in his wisdom and love, would not forsake him. Abraham's response to Isaac's question about the lamb for the offering further exemplifies his faith. He declared, "God himself will provide the lamb." This statement is not just an attempt to pacify Isaac, but a profound declaration of his trust in God's provision. His faith was not just in God's power, but also in his goodness. As we move to the climax of this narrative, we see Abraham's faith put to the ultimate test. With the altar built and Isaac bound, Abraham raises the knife, only to be stopped by the angel of the Lord. A ram is provided, just as Abraham had foreseen. This divine intervention is a poignant reminder that God provides, even in the most dire of circumstances. God's pleasure with Abraham's obedience is evident as he reaffirms his promises. He blesses Abraham with descendants as numerous as the stars and influence over nations. This blessing is not just for Abraham, but echoes throughout generations, a testament to the enduring power of faith. When we look at Abraham's test of faith, we are reminded of the value of trust and obedience, even in the face of great adversity. It calls us to reflect on our faith and challenges us to trust in God's plan, no matter how daunting it may seem. In our toughest tests, just like Abraham, we should remember, God provides.